I'm doing fabulous. How are you,
Great.
Brian?
I'm doing very, very well. I appreciate you asking. Well, ladies, I would love to turn our virtual stage over to the two of you right now. I'm very excited for this next conversation.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Ryan.
Thanks,
And I have
Ryan.
to I have to admit, I found White Lotus both addicting and disturbing too. Did you see it, Susan?
I did, and I actually think her comments were exactly alike. I don't know if I liked it. Walked out with it was entertaining. I'm glad I watched it, and I still have questions.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. But it's good to see you on the screen.
I know. It's so great to catch up, Joan. Um, I can't think of a better way to start off this conference being virtual, but you and I are in two completely opposite locations in the world. Do you want to share with our audience where you're at?
Sure. I'm actually in London in the UK offices for McDonald's. I'm actually hijacking my boss's office. So it's always, it's challenging to figure out the time zones, but we started traveling again on a limited basis. So I'm lucky I made it over here.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm right now up in Seattle for work and I'm enjoying it, but typically I reside in San Francisco. And I mean, we made everything work and the time frame was great.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do this. It's an honor, and thanks for the time and commitment you're doing to moderate this as well.
Definitely. So why don't we jump in into our discussion? Joan, can you tell me a little bit about your role at McDonald's?
Sure. So as Ryan said, I'm Senior Director Global Brand Marketing, and I lead our creative effectiveness program globally. I'm not going to lie, to be honest. I think I have one of the best jobs. It's pretty awesome. I get to help steward what I think is the best brand in the world to better connect with people and culture around the world, and I get to work with amazing agency teams and our brand teams globally. To Our mission for the Creative Effectiveness Program is basically to inspire world-class modern marketing that builds our brand and business. So it's pretty awesome. And just for a sense of why I'm in the UK, a part of what our program does, it's one part strategic leadership, it's another part capability building, another part best practice sharing, and then a huge part of community building. And so I'm in the UK because tomorrow we're filming our third annual Feel Good Marketing Awards, which are our award ceremony where we recognize the best work from around the world at McDonald's within the McDonald's system. And it's a pretty big deal. It's really fun. So we had about 300 submissions. It's a really hot competition. We're awarding the top 12 next week. And it's pretty impressive considering it was a year where marketing was decreased because of COVID. We're celebrating 2020. And it's a huge event. We were able to take it virtually last year because of COVID. It was one of the silver linings, was able to share the event with more people. So we had about 2,000 marketers and agency partners tune in from around the world. And it's just a great moment for us to step back and be inspired by each other's work and kind of come together as a community. So can you tell I'm a little excited?
No, I mean, that's one of the key takeaways that I've gotten to know with you is how much you love McDonald's and how like inspiring your work has been. And it's been opening windows and ideas to me just as we've been talking. So I love it. And I think that's a positive of COVID, that you're now able to share more with more people versus having to have the people in a specific room to do these awards.
It makes such a difference. I mean, it's like, of course we should have, it's only the third year, the first year was in person, but of course we should have opened it up. But you just don't think of these things until you're faced with constraints, and then it brings out creativity. But also before we get too far into it, I wanted to ask you, this is week 3, right? In your new job? You just
Definitely.
How's it going?
At LG Ads, it's going great. I feel like my career is coming full circle. I started out in broadcast buying, and now I'm on the new team at LG Ads, selling their connected TV device and technology. And it's a full circle with technology and full screen, video coming together, the power of sight, sound, and motion. And so I'm very excited. It's really good. As Sarah said in the conversation earlier, you need to raise your hand and be your own voice. And I found that even when I started in the interview process, that was actually really important to me. And that's how I ended up here. So when I came on board, they said, could you do this? And I said, yes, I would love to be part of it. So thanks. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, I know how hard it is to onboard a new job. And so the fact that you're taking time out to do this is really a commitment. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's great. I love it. It's been fabulous. So, we were talking earlier about our careers over the course of the past couple of weeks. And one of the things that really came out to me was that you graduated with a psychology degree. And, now you're here at McDonald's. Like, what inspired you to pursue a career in marketing?
Well, it's pretty easy. I followed my passions. So I've always been incredibly interested in understanding what makes people tick. And so in school, for a little while, I overthought my major and thought about what should I do. And then I finally said, well, what am I most natural at doing? And what is something I absolutely love? And it's psychology. It's understanding people. And so it's just what makes me tick. And so I thought I was going to be a clinical psychologist. And I had the chance to do an internship with a hospital in Chicago, which, by the way, is where I'm based. And it was really an awesome internship. It was understanding how to predict the severity of psychiatric illness in inpatients. And it was pretty intense. And I think it scared me a little bit from being a clinical psychologist because of the intensity. So I thought, well, before I go straight and get my PhD, maybe I'll explore what else I can do with my background and passions. And so I started researching, and I had not really heard of marketing research at the time. And I found out about marketing research and said, well, that sounds like a great way to put my skills to use. And then when I found out you could do marketing research for advertising, and that connected my love of creativity and ideas, I was sold. So I ended up, I'm one of the rare people, I think, who found their dream job from the beginning. Maybe because I was so pointed and I really knew what I wanted and why I wanted it. But my very first job was at Leo Burnett. Actually, if you can believe it, on the McDonald's account. So everything comes
full circle.
It does. It comes full circle. I love the brand then. I love it now. My job was very different back then. I did local marketing. I did promotions, but I knew I was in the right job when one of my very first assignments was a white paper on the psychology of promotional games. So if you think about, how I ended up in marketing, it's pretty intuitive. It's about, my entire career is built on empathy, understanding people, what they need, what they hunger for, so brands could better serve them and do it through the power of ideas and creativity. So that's my jam.
Oh, I love it. I think that's fabulous. And it totally, psychology definitely aligns with advertising and marketing. Yeah, it's fabulous. When you came over into your career, I was taking a look at your background. It's very interesting. I see that it's been nonlinear in your career path. I'm just very curious about, how you started out, where you got to, and where you are now, and just how you navigated that all.
Yeah. Well, I'd say the straight line through my career is I've always been a consumer-centric marketer, but you're totally right. I have, my career path hasn't really been typical. One person I know said it doesn't fit a primary color. And that's really been intentional, and it's worked for me. And I'll tell you why. I made a conscious choice in my career to cross train and really dive into the different areas of marketing and different areas of the business where I felt like my muscles were a little weaker. Okay. So specifically, I spent a lot of my early days at Leo Burnett, and I got an incredible marketing foundation. But even then, I was jumping in, and I was in insights, then planning, which are very similar, cousins to each other. But I did a stint in account management. I was always raising my hand for kind of more innovative opportunities because I always like to see the other side. And so I made a conscious choice to cross train. So I've had experience on the creative side with both Leo Burnett and Kramer Krasselt, an independent agency, the media side, leading connections planning with Mindshare, and the client side with both Miller and now McDonald's. And it's something I said after I went and made the first jump across the chasm from agency to client. When I went to Miller, I said I'd always want to kind of go back and forth, because I feel like you pick up different skill sets and you get different types of experiences and inspiration on the different sides of the fence. For example, at Miller, the reason I jumped at that job opportunity, even though I stayed at Leo for about 13 years, which was basically a family, not quite long enough to get the watch everyone got at 15 years, but long enough to really feel committed.
Yeah.
But when I left Leo Burnett, it was to go client side. So I could really get involved in problems before advertising even thought of. So really get more upstream in problem solving. And I'm so glad I did, because it just opened my eyes so much to what else goes on in the process of developing marketing. For example, I mean, I used to think in my job that when a campaign was sold, so you've developed a campaign, you've sold it to the client, it's done. But what I learned at Miller is my job was just starting as a client, because then my job was to sell it through the system, make sure it stayed pure, didn't change intent, help make sure, we're being held accountable to results, we're optimizing. And it made me more empathetic to what agency people. So then when I went back to the agency, it's not like just the campaigns of clients go, make sure it's sell through. It's how do you help your clients do their job better? And so anyway, at the end of the day, we're all working together, no matter what side you're on, creating meaningful connections between brands and people. We're just kind of coming at it from different angles, depending on where you sit. And
Definitely.
so, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you bring a big point earlier about basically my rule of thumb is you don't know what you don't know. So learning other disciplines, sitting in, your client's seats, working for them or working with them, and just getting a 360-degree view, which what you do with your career is like so helpful. And I'm sure it's making you a better leader at McDonald's too.
It's, there's that term, marketing is a team sport. But I think it's true. It's more true now than ever before. Like you cannot do it without all the different facets coming together. So it makes me a fierce advocate from having an integrated team from the onset, because I've just seen what happens when you have diverse perspectives at the very beginning. You often solve different problems than if you have the typical people who usually kick off a campaign, for example. So anyway, I really believe in integration, and I believe in cross training. So anyway, that's a little bit about how my path, my nonlinear path, makes sense for me.
No, it definitely does. I love it. When you're looking at your career, were there pivotal moments that contributed to your success along the path, whether it was at Miller, going to McDonald's, at Leo Burnett, and can you share some of those?
Sure. I would say the most pivotal moments were the ones where I took the biggest leaps and I was most uncomfortable. I wouldn't say I was always the most successful, but I always grew it's true, but I always grew the most. And there's one in particular that stands head and shoulders above the rest. And it's actually when I went to the media side. So when I went to Mindshare, I thought, first of all, let me tell you why I went there. It was because I felt like it was a muscle that I needed to strengthen with media, as important as it is, and so critical to how we connect now with consumers. I just knew at the time, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, that I had to get much deeper in knowledge of and understanding of digital and data and tech to be successful for myself. So I thought I'd go for 2 years, I'd get my master's in media. That was my goal. And I have to be honest, they say it takes 90 days to onboard a new job. It was a year. I didn't understand what anyone was saying for a year, and I'm not joking. It was like learning a foreign language, and it's amazing because at the time, and it's such a close cousin. But I came from the world of feelings and big ideas, and all of a sudden, I've landed now in a place where data and tech are front and center in every conversation. And an example that sticks with me. I was feeling pretty uncomfortable, I'll be honest, just feeling out of my element for really the first time in my career. And we had a leadership conference in Canada, and it was a really cool, actually, if anybody wants to borrow this, I thought it was really good technique. They did during breaks these stream sessions. So they were breakout rooms where there were different topics pertaining to our business or the industry, and you just kind of showed up in the rooms that interest you, and everyone had 30-minute chats about it. And so it was just a really cool way to connect with different people and then just kind of talk about the future. So anyway, long story short, one of them was on, okay, as a media agency, how do we build out our content and creative capability? I'm like, that's mine. I got this. Finally, I can be in a conversation where I know exactly what everyone's talking about. And so I show up in the room, and the moderator kicks off, and they're like, okay, so what can we do to kind of help grow our creative practice and content offering. And the very first suggestion was about data and tech, leveraging our data and tech. And I was like, oh, wow, I had never at the time been in any conversation on creative where data and tech was the first thing and is the answer of how do you get better at creative. That was, again, 7-8 years ago. The world was very different then. I've learned a lot, and as has, I think, the industry, but now I get it, right? It was what they were thinking is that by having the data and tech, we had the insights. We had the insights on how consumers were acting and behaving and how better to connect with them. So if we could just leverage those insights, it makes for incredible content and opportunities to connect. But because the language, right, what the team was saying or what the person was saying was just coming from a different starting place, it made it harder to understand. And I have to say, I am so grateful to everyone at Mindshare for being patient with me and teaching me. I raised my hand all the time and said, I don't know what you're saying. And they took the time. I had a lot of friends and a lot of help, but I'm really glad I stuck it out because I ended up staying not just 2 years, but 5 years, because because we took the time to figure out what the different disciplines could do together, I think we built out a really, really compelling culture where we brought creativity and media moments together to really connect with consumers in a way that really became a competitive advantage. And this team continues today. They're awesome. And it's one of my prouder moments is helping to be part of that change. So anyway, long story short, back to your question, it's when I made the biggest leaps and I have been the most uncomfortable.
I think being uncomfortable is a good thing. Sometimes people get too sedentary in their career and stay very linear and don't try new jobs or try new skill sets, but they need to. I'm always about I love being uncomfortable.
Aren't you even didn't you even say you're taking it probably doesn't make you uncomfortable, but talking about growth, aren't you taking on top of getting a new job, aren't you taking a class right now?
Yeah, it is. That's one of the things that I really looked at in my skill set, or as I call like our pencil boxes, what are the tools that we need in our careers? And so one of the things I have in common with you is I'm taking a class through Kellogg at Northwestern on advanced marketing principles and leadership skills. And it's been a great insight just to get fundamentals from a client side of like what marketing on automation on your side looks like to bring the data and technology to clients, and how do you keep the customer journey going? And it's very insightful, and I'm learning so much. And I highly recommend anyone, whether it's through masterclass or even to a college class, to learn skills that you don't know to well round your portfolio.
I totally agree. I think it's critical, and just it makes life interesting.
Definitely. I mean, I know that you and I've been speaking a lot, and through our careers, we've had some great mentors. Yeah. When you look at your career, who has had the most impact on your journey? Did you have a professional mentor? And, can you talk a little bit about that? If you're comfortable sharing.
No, of course. I mean, it's really important because honestly, I think my career has been powered by amazing mentors. I think it's been absolutely positively critical to my success. I was pretty fortunate at the very beginning. My first boss was I consider one of the very greats in the industry, a woman named Denise Fedewa. She ended up becoming, after my boss, she became a lifelong friend and mentor, but she really set the tone of someone who's just always there, will tell it like it is. She always kept it very real. Inspired me, really a role model. And so I had that as a starting place. And then every single chapter of my career, I think I naturally just built relationships, but made a conscious effort to maintain them because I really treasure those relationships and keep them close, women and men, by the way. I have male mentors as well. Another one of my mentors is someone I actually had the pleasure of working with 3 times in my career, a woman named Jackie Woodward, who some people may know. She's amazing. But she has recently brought a collection of the women. There are a number of us she's mentored throughout her career, and she's brought us together as a group so that we can be inspired by each other, support each other, and it's kind of among the same generation that we are, kind of a women supporting women group. But anyway, yes, last time she brought us together, she shared something that I thought was really cool. It was a concept called building your own personal board of directors.
Okay.
And so it's a group of individuals that you assemble in your mind for the purposes of navigating your career. So it's a much more structured, much more strategic approach to what I think I've done or I have been doing naturally, and what people do when they're networking. But it's a concept I think is really helpful because it's really intentional. And so some of the tips she gave is find interesting people who've been in your shoes or similar shoes. Another one is make sure you get people who tell it like it is. You don't want people who are just going to agree with you, but you want people who are really going to push back and challenge you. And then the big thing is really think strategically, like map out what do you need, and then where are your gaps, and then pursue the, fill the positions on your board based on what your gaps are. And I think it's just a really interesting concept, one I wish I knew sooner. And I think it's really helpful for everybody, but especially women, as connecting is one of our superpowers.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think you can definitely use it as women or even men too, when they're looking at where you want to be. So look at that job you want maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, see what the job description is, see what skill sets required, so you can see what gaps you may or may not have, or you need to enhance. And I think that's a brilliant idea to make sure that you're well-rounded. That advice
for sure.
Fantastic.
I love that idea of thinking, 5, 10 years and aim high,
Yeah.
and just be bold and go for it. I totally agree. I heard Sarah mentioned that too, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah.
And fabulous too is a good addition. Yes, I agree. The other thing about the board of directors I don't want to forget to mention that we talked about is it was eye-opening to think about who you are on, whose board of directors you sit on. And there's some people that, it's obvious because you directly, they're a mentor.
Yeah.
And you're definitely on their board, but there's probably a lot of people that we influence that we don't realize, that if we stop and think, I think just, you may not hear it for years later, but I think the most rewarding thing to me is, when I get those emails or texts or calls and say, hey, you know what, remember when you did this? It really helped. And I just wanted to say thank you. Like, I will save those texts. I will save those voicemails forever, because to me, I love the work, but that's the most meaningful part of the job for me anyway.
It is. And also when you don't realize you're indirectly influencing or helping someone, and they come back a couple years later and they text you that, I think it's just so meaningful because it's so impactful, because you weren't intentionally trying to do something, but you were helping these people out along the way as a mentor or indirectly. And I think it's just, really crucial just to always thank people, even if it's a year or two later, to say, hey, you helped me, and this is what the results of it. Thank you so much. Oh, we have a question coming in. What is the single most important lesson you've learned from early mentor that you think about all the time? And we love Joan. From David.
From David Edelman.
Dave Edwards.
Oh, Dave Edwards, another friend. Okay. So I'm sorry, I was so distracted by the name. What was the question?
What is the single most important lesson you've learned from an early mentor that you think about all the time?
Oh my God. All right. An early mentor, think about all the time. Well, so I was going to talk about it later, but two things. I think Denise, I'm going to mention Denise again. And if anyone on the phone knows her, they know why I keep bringing her up, because she's pretty special. But one of the things she told me early on is take care of yourself. And I remember, this is so ridiculous, but I'm kind of an A student. I like to achieve. And early on, we had this big project, and I had been invited to go for the evening to go to a talk to hear Bill Clinton speak. And it's a pretty big deal at the time. I think he was president at the time, to go hear him speak. And I didn't even mention it to her because I knew how important the project was, and I was just going to work through it and pass up the opportunity. And then she mentioned something like, did you have plans? And I casually said, yeah, but it's no big deal. I had blah, blah, blah. And she's like, get out of here right now. We will cover this. And I think, I needed to hear that. And it's something I try to do with my teams and the people I work with. Like, we all have each other's backs, right? For things that are important, lean on each other. We're a team. We spend so much of our waking hours together. So anyway, Dave, long story short, I think it was to be human, to lean on other people, to lean on the team, and to be there as someone for others to lean on to.
Awesome. I love it. I think that's brilliant advice. From being in female, being in marketing, we've been in our careers for quite some time. Like, what kind of advice can you give the next generation of women who might be starting their careers out, or even maybe early entry or even mid-level? In what kind of challenge, what kind of advice can you give them as they're coming into the advertising and marketing space?
And I think these might be repetitive with what Sarah said, but maybe that's good for consistency. But I already talked about taking the leaps. And I would say from a women's standpoint, the extra angle I'd put on is and the data shows that I think women will, and I know I maybe just speak from experience, will think, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that job. I haven't done this, or this, and they'd be better off if they had someone, a candidate with these skill sets. Whereas men are more likely to say, you know what, I'm going to learn on the job. And I would just say, I wish earlier in my career, I would have just been willing to jump in and be willing to learn on the job, as opposed to really feeling like I've mastered it before I get the job. So that's it. Aim high and really be bold and push yourself, because that's the change we need. We have to seek if we're gonna have more women in leadership roles. So that's one. Take the leaps. I'd say take the mic. And just no one, if anyone, for the people who know me on this call, no one will believe that early in my career, I didn't speak up, because I'm very vocal now, but it's true. I was reluctant to speak up in the first few years of my career. And I love now when I don't love it. I love having the moment when I have someone who I work with, or even just work alongside, and we're in a meeting and they whisper something to me. Because I always say the same thing, don't tell me, tell them. And so it's take the mic, really, no one's going to remember that, hopefully, the dumb things you say. I'm saying that now as I'm on this video call, but they will remember the smart things you say. And so just speak up. And I think the next generation's better than that. We were a little more hierarchical back in the dark ages in my day. I already talked about taking care of yourself. So really important, and something I have to be reminded of. In one point, just as a quick aside, because I think it's important for people to hear, in one point in my career, I was facing a pretty serious medical issue, and I was dumb enough to I knew I needed to take a medical leave, but I kept postponing it because, I'm just so important. And I hope everyone knows I'm being super sarcastic, but that's how you feel, right? I can't let everyone down. There's so much going on. Now is not a good time. And thank goodness my boss was looking out for me, because I wasn't looking out for me. And you know what? I did take the medical leave. The world didn't end, and the teams was fantastic without me. And we're all, I hate to say it, but we're all disposable, but our bodies aren't disposable. And I think, especially during COVID, it has been a killer year. It has been so hard emotionally. It has been so draining. And one of the things on our team we talk about is, I try to say, the happy, healthy plan now, because we had some breaking points during COVID. And we say, okay, it's not just can we get it done, because we can get anything done. It's can we get it done and stay happy and healthy. And so we try to reinforce that, because it's easy just to kind of go. So anyway, I saw, by the way, I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn, there's a pretty cool thing that's going on around right now from Google, called the Google Wellness Manifesto. And it's pretty cool. It's kind of it's okay to, and then it ends with, it's okay to not be okay. And so just a reminder, all of us.
I had very similar, I had some similar health things a couple of years ago too. And even Sarah mentioned it with COVID, that you really need to be focusing on yourself and your health, because everyone is either getting burnout, and we only have one body. We only have this time. And at the end of the day, we're not, I hate to say this, we're not brain surgeons. We're not saving the world, so, but regardless if you're a brain surgeon or in marketing, like, you need to make sure you're happy and healthy, because if you're not, you can't have the best output for yourself or any job.
Or any job, but especially marketing. It's a creative business, and creativity only can flourish when there's room for it too. So yeah, I totally agree. And something I have to keep reminding myself. So now, so do as I say, not as I do all the time, but
no, definitely understand that. So we have a question from, I think it's Nylish. From a consumer behavior perspective, has there ever been some common aspects which will stay true in the new digital space? What is the one change in customer behavior which is impacting the customer journey in recent times? I mean, I think you had talked about this with COVID in our last discussion.
Well, so the first part of the question was about what's going to stay true. I don't make sure.
Like from a consumer behavior perspective, has there been some common aspects which still stay true in this new digital space?
Okay, I'll
Like,
take that one first, and then the second
Yeah.
part. Okay, well, so I think, human behavior is one of those things that it takes, evolution is not quick to change, and so basic human needs and wants, I mean, are in human values and what excites us and what scares us, I think, are pretty evergreen. I think what's exciting about the digital space is just we have more opportunities to connect with people in more ways and do it in more real time and in a more personal way than ever before. And so I would say people have the same motivations. It's just in digital, we have what's so exciting about being in marketing is we just have such opportunity to connect in better and more interesting ways. I do think we're in a war for attention. I mean, we are over one of the things. There was a great book I read, like, I think it was 20 years ago, and it was by a woman named Melinda Davis, and it was called The New Culture of Desire. And in it, she predicted that the most valuable resource was going to be peace of mind. And at the time, it wasn't, it made sense, but we weren't in that space where we were all so overwhelmed. And she's right. Like our brains are physically not wired to be able to process all of the stimulation that is coming at us. And that certainly pertains to ads, and it certainly pertains to brands. And so I think more than ever before, and this is something we are working really, I mean, we put front and center at McDonald's, is we have to earn people's attention every single day in marketing. It's about getting invited into their lives, not buying our way into their lives. And so if you think about the customer journey, to bring it back to the second part of the question, I would say I call it the pre-consideration stage of the journey, right? Getting into people's mindsets it's more important than ever. And it's not just about, it's really about flipping the script and starting with what people care about, and then how your brand brings value and meaning to their lives. And then of course, we have so much more capability kind of through consideration to the purchase side of the funnel to be much more personalized and give people the information they want at the right time, because people just have higher expectations. If they're going to be giving us their data, we better be doing good with it.
Well, I think with the way technologies come in the marketplace, with data, giving data to the big behemoths, and also social media, like they have such a one-to-one now interaction with brands they didn't have 7 or 8 years ago. And it's almost like these brands are already invited into the house. Like you mentioned earlier, you have to be invited, and consumers are inviting them into the house. So, from a woman's perspective, and, being in marketing, have you ever had to face challenges in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them being a woman? And I hate to always focus on that, but with the panel we're talking about today, and we mentioned earlier about your career and raising the ranks, like, have you seen challenges as a woman?
Well, there are so very many ways I could answer this, but first of all, I just want to say that while I am all woman and I never pretended to be anything but we're pink.
We're not bashing men here.
Yeah. No. But I have to say, I never really wanted to stand out for being a woman in business. I just wanted to be great. I didn't want to be a great woman. So it wasn't really until I took on more leadership positions that I realized you become a role model as a woman in business, whether you want to or not. It's not a choice. People start to look at you and look up to you and look at what you're doing. And it's really timely, your question, because I was at breakfast this morning. I'm staying at a very nice hotel, and there's a lot of advertising people around, a creative industry. And there was a conversation. It was pretty cool because it was a networking conversation between two women that clearly they worked for the same company, but don't really know each other that well. So it was doing, what women do, which is hearing about each other and giving each other advice. But something caught my ear and I couldn't help it. I eavesdropped, but I did tell you, I'm endlessly fascinated about people, so I couldn't help it.
Well,
so they're about that's psychology. That's right. It's psychology.
Yes.
But it was interesting because the woman was mid-career and she was talking about maternity leave. And so again, I'm in the UK, so maternity leaves are longer here. And so that's important context, because she said, well, we get a year, but the problem is the senior woman in their company just took 3 weeks, and that's all she took. And so now it set this unsaid precedent And so now this woman is struggling with how much maternity leave can she really take and it not look bad, which is crazy. And I bet that leader has absolutely no idea that her action sent this ripple effect through the organization now. But that's why I just think we just have to keep in mind our roles, and that what we do really helps set the tone and lead the way for the next generation. And I really try. I mean, I try really hard to support other women. One of my favorite quotes, it's kind of cheesy, but I love it. It's be the kind of woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling others it was broken. And I have had that, men and women who have fixed my crown, didn't tell other people it's broken. Again, I owe a lot of my career to that, but I try to do that for others as well, because I think that's how we get better.
Okay, great. I love that. You know, we have one question coming in from Whitney that I actually think is very synergistic with what we were just talking about.
Okay.
She was saying, you know, when applying for jobs, where you've experienced gaps, I'm assuming gaps in the career span, how do you influence or persuade employers to take the risk on you over people who may have a better fit in the job requirements? Or maybe it's gaps in skills.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's a really good question. I don't know if there's one answer, but I can give you some examples of things. So I think, first of all, you have to make your gaps and desire to fill them clear. So that's one thing, is be vocal about it. And it's not always getting a job, right? It might be. I'll tell you a story about a woman who, I don't know what to call her, because she worked for me twice at 2 different jobs. She's a mentee. She's now one of my mentors. She's one of my closest friends, but she's also just amazing. And I'll never forget the day she was in PR and I was in planning. I was heading up a planning department, and she showed up knocking on my doors at the time. And she said, "Hi, I'm Louisa. I think I'm a planner." And I thought, oh, okay, well, all right, let's talk about this. Why do you think that? And she told me all the reasons why. She learned about what we do. She sees what we do. This is what she's about. And I thought, we didn't have an opening, but I thought, well, that's interesting and good for her, right? And then it's interesting. She was so passionate about it, and we could always use help. I created something made up, because you can. I called it the Planning PR Liaison. And so I unofficially suggested a role for her to kind of test drive planning. She was awesome. She was a natural planner. When we had an opening, she got the job. But I would just say, you have to, and I know you feel this way, Susan, too. You have to advocate for your own career, because nobody's going to do it for you.
100%.
And it doesn't always have to be a formal job. Sometimes you can get experience, just be crafty, try to be scrappy and get the experience other ways. Maybe it's through external, volunteering. Maybe it's through, as you're doing, taking a class. But what you're doing, though, just based on the way you're asking the question, is absolutely the right thing to do. You've recognized something you need, you're going after it. And at a certain point, that's really what you can do, is just put what's in your control in your control.
Definitely. So I think we only have a couple minutes left, and I'm dying to know, is there a secret menu at McDonald's? And if so, what's your favorite thing to order off of it?
Okay, well, first of all, my favorite thing to order at McDonald's is fries, hands down, top 5 food of all foods in my life.
Yeah.
And that's always been true. But I wouldn't say it's the secret menu, but it's something that I love about McDonald's and I'm thinking about it especially now as I'm traveling again, but no matter where you go in McDonald's, we have certain menu items, our core menu that's iconic and the same everywhere. And that's part of what makes people love McDonald's, the McDonald's brand as much as they do. But we're also highly local. And so that's, we have a very strong connection to the local communities that we serve. And so in every McDonald's around the world, you'll find local menu items that you can't get anywhere else. So there's a rice burger called Gohan Burger in Japan, or yesterday I had a Cadbury milk chocolate McFlurry. So I would just say, when you're traveling, don't pass up McDonald's, because there's always something great to try. And I see we are at time, because Ryan is back.
Hi, Ryan.
Now I'm hungry. It sounds incredible.
Well, I was just going to say, I will comment on try McDonald's in local areas when you're traveling. I was at a McDonald's in Krakow, Poland, and I had a very unique breakfast sandwich that was delicious that you said is actually Sweetie's breakfast sandwich that she brought over and you're promoting in America. It's the hash browns in the breakfast sandwich.
Yeah, Sweetie's encouraging a good mix up right now in the US of taking potatoes and using them in different ways. So I haven't been to Poland though, so I've never tried that. Sounds great.
And it sounds like I need to get to Poland to try that as well. Well, Susan and Joan, thank you so much for being here. Definitely going to make sure I can hit a